Osiris.
We are live.
Yay.
This is quite an awesome crew we have here. Hey, I'm RJ. This is HF Pod, but more importantly, this is the collaboration that everyone's been waiting months for. Not Tab and Goose, but the collaboration between HF Pod, Always Almost There, and The Great Beyond. And we have representatives from all three shows here today. I guess I'll just quickly introduce everybody. Ryan Storm, say hi, Ryan.
Hi. Hello.
Brian, Jive Goose, thank you
Howdy.
for all you do. Welcome from Colorado. Neil, who is in Boston, he doesn't like his Twitter handle, but you guys know him as Majestic Hosewood. And then, of course, Greg Knight from The Great Beyond and lots of other things. Hi, Greg.
Hey, Bruce is here too, right, Bruce? There he is.
Hey, Bruce.
Hi, Bruce.
This is awesome already. We've been planning this for a long time. Just so everyone knows, we're going to be doing this after every Tab Goose show. And thanks, Ryan and Great Beyond, and thanks to all you guys for being willing to collaborate because this is fun. All right, so guys, three of you were there last night. Brian and I were at home, so I'll just want to ask you guys what it was like kind of getting ready to go into the show and all that, and anything pre-show that you want to share.
Well, we got my intent was to get Peter's side seats as close as possible so I could get a good view of that new Vintage Vibe stereo console, which if anybody noticed, that's like the big blocky amp thing that the Vintage Vibe is sitting on now. Very exciting addition to Peter's rig for me, but I was very happy with my seats. I was with my family as well as D from Always Almost There. It was my first time meeting him in real life, which was very exciting. He unfortunately is at the airport right now and is unable to join us for this recap, but I believe he will be joining us on Saturday. But it was really, really cool. The vibe was great pre-show. D ran into Jeff on the floor, who was just kind of walking around incognito as he tends to do. So, it was funny to say hi. We were just right behind Rich and June Atkin. Shout out to them for being awesome. Introduced my mother. They had a nice, Jewish parent moment. But it was just a lot of excitement pre-show.
Yeah, I will agree. The Rail fam was out in full force. We actually stopped by the venue early on, probably around 1:00. Rick forgot a pedal, so we picked it up and brought it to him. The show had to happen, so we, essentially saved the day. But it was cool to see everybody out, at 1 p.m. And then, of course, the standard poster flippers were out too. Kind of sitting outside, so the vibe was strong. People ready to profit left and right. But the energy was tangible. I think prior to the start of the show, you could hear like the reluctant Goose chant happening. The Clear Fish fans kind of doing it for the first time. I love it. I feel like it's a win. But it was super cool. It was super cool. And really like just how convenient to have Rick and Trey on one stage. Saves us so much time.
Yeah, and Portland is an awesome place to see a show. Everybody should check it out if they get a chance. I was in a hotel right across the street from the venue. I had dinner at an awesome restaurant right before the show, and then just very smoothly walked into the show to the floor. It was like maybe 3 minutes to get in, and it was great.
Amazing. I mean, the city itself is great, and it's like what an awesome place to kick it off. So let's talk about this Goose set. I mean, I was thinking earlier when I started, I watched it all this morning, not last night, but I think like the Turbulence and Atlas Dogs, those two songs to start that was a great one to start it off. I feel like those songs are both approachable and kind of, they like assuming that part of the audience has never seen or heard Goose, at least some people, it's like a good intro. I guess, sorry, I just saw this comment. Apparently, it was 97 degrees inside, which is.
I think it was. I heard
don't have a problem with
stories
that.
of. I heard stories of like Fish in 2016 that it was like a sauna in there. It was fine last night. Brian and Neil at least know that I'm a big shorts at the show guy. Unfortunately, I was not able to wear shorts last night because of how cold it was outside. But I was still. It was still comfortable. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow though, where it's going to be like 20 degrees Celsius here. So I will be in shorts for Lowell and Mohegan.
All
I
right.
have no idea what that means. 20 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
Warm.
No one does.
He does this to us all the time. Yeah.
How many meters back were you, Ryan, for when the show started? That's all I want to know. What do you guys think? Actually, Brian, just because we haven't heard from you yet, I know you do so much keeping us informed. I always check your Twitter feed when I want to know what Goose is doing if I'm not at the show. So thank you for all that. What do you think of the opener and the first few sets of that songs of the set?
Yeah. So RJ, you're welcome for everything, and thanks for having us on. This is gonna be really fun. And I used to live in Portland, by the way. So I'll just quickly echo what everyone has already said. It's such a great city. I really wish I could have made this show, but alas. So it's funny because heading into the show, I was thinking a little bit about what strategically what they might put out there for this crowd, because like you said, obviously you got to be a fair amount of people in that arena who aren't familiar with the music. So when they opened up with Turbulence, I immediately was like, oh yeah, I mean, great choice, such a great choice. And it's funny because when we talk about that song in various chat groups, everyone either says it reminds them of Billy Joel, which I totally hear. Or that it reminds them of Fish, which I also totally hear. And so, I thought that was a really good song to open up with because it's upbeat. It has a lot of energy. They've been just absolutely crushing this song. Whenever we review a show with Turbulence, it always ends up being kind of a talking point of how hot it was. We talk a lot about kind of our preferred song placement. And this is one where we're always saying, open the set with it, close the set with it. It just has power. And they crushed it. I was immediately thinking that Rick especially just sounded great. I was making a joke that, he's clearly been putting in 10 hours a day, on this off time, but crushed it. And then, I also noticed a nice little, I don't know, Ryan, if you noticed this, but just at the very end of the outro, Peter just with a nice, gentle little final few notes on the piano. And it sounded really, really cool. I hope that, intentional or not, I hope that that's something that they continue to do, because I thought just a nice little touch at the very end. Fantastic opener choice. Loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Can I wholeheartedly disagree?
Oh, PowerPoint. I know. I know Bruce
dare.
has opinions on the beginning of this set, but I
Yeah.
didn't really hear yours last night.
Yeah, Bruce is disgusted. I think, obviously, so proud of the guys, so proud that they are here doing their thing with Trey on a massive stage and performing the way that they are. As someone who's been seeing Turbulence in the Night Race since the Visuto days, I love the song, and I like Billy Joel. If you want to join the show, I like Billy Joel as much as I like Fish. But my thing is, I think coming out of the gates with a tour like this, there's a lot of people in the audience who are excited to see Trey, who have never seen Goose before, who maybe recognize that Arcadia song, perhaps Slow Ready for the dance moves on stage, and a couple others, loosely sprinkled in. Obviously, these guys are playing their music that speaks to them, that speaks to us. This is why we're podcasting. However, I do think that there's some merit to not necessarily coming out swinging with an Arcadia with horns. However, setting yourself up for success with something really well, like a Type 1 jam vehicle like Atlas. I think it allows you to really loosen up, do what you know well, and really get the crowd on your side. And I think the Turbulence was excellent, but I do think that folks were kind of like, oh, I don't actually know what this song is. And Ryan, you probably know how many times Goose has played it live. It's not exactly wildly accessible on Nugs, right? So it's not
9 times.
familiar. Right. And so in a lot of shows. So, great start. I also think the guys are busy right now, so they're not listening, which is why I'm being so transparent here. But I do, I think right out of the gates, in my opinion, and maybe this is just because I used to go to a lot of hip hop concerts, but you want to grab the crowd immediately. And I feel like the music was excellent, but I think there was a little bit of a question mark. And because of that, the engines didn't really start revving until Electric Avenue.
Interesting, because I just did a quick little check on elgoose.net, and Turbulence has been played 9 times since it was debuted 39 shows ago. So I think that's still a fairly decent amount. It's accessible if you look through this summer's and this fall's shows. And I think, your point about them opening with a hit like maybe Born or Hunger Side or Slow Ready, etc. I feel like opening with Turbulence is actually a better move because you go with a song that people aren't expecting. That's like, Fish going and, they're in this situation and they're going to open with Farmhouse because it's their most streamed song on Spotify. That's not always.
I wouldn't make that suggestion. No, definitely not.
Correct. It's not always the right move to go with it. And I think Goose really executed, the pre-Trey portion of this set incredibly well, in terms of this is the first night of the tour. We're going to appeal to the Fish fans that are watching on the webcast. We're going to appeal to the Fish fans that are in the audience, the people that are not 100% sold, if you will. And so I think these first 5 or 6 songs, you get Turbulence, you get Atlas Dogs. Again, RJ mentioned both of these are fantastic songs, showcases, the band's songwriting, a couple of, more unique vibes, at least, everyone in the band sounding very precise, very, very fantastic. And then we dive into Flea, which then you get the goofier side of the songwriting, but the trade-off there is, here's our first jam of the night. Here's our first piece of extended improv. And they built they immediately hi, we're Goose. We're really good at tension release builds. Here's 15 minutes of some really phenomenal tension building. And, they deliver in that Flea, just peak after peak after peak. Crowds seem to be digging it. But I think the way they started off the set, it was really, really well. I'm guessing they're going to be taking a different approach to it as the tour goes on. Once they're okay, people have been webcasting for 3-4 nights now. Maybe we don't have to be as, planned or we don't have to be marketing to new fans as much. But I think this was an amazing way to start off the tour to a bunch of new people.
So thanks, Ryan. Neil, what were your thoughts about the first half of the set, or how that? I guess what Greg said that kind of got cooking with Electric Avenue. I got a couple texts from friends who were there seeing Goose, I think, for the first time and enjoying that, enjoying the Electric Avenue. It seemed like people were really into it. What was your take on how that set unfolded?
The funny thing is, I do agree with Greg. I think they could have come out swinging, and I was expecting them to come out swinging. And when they played Turbulence, I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that at all. But I love the tune, so I was really excited about that. The Flea was very good. I was excited about that. Also surprised that they played Flea kind of in their first show on this tour. But the Electric Avenue, which is an insane, 6 times this year they've played Electric Avenue now?
Yep.
So that one
most played.
Really, really surprising. You're going to go out there and you're going to play, how many songs did they play? 8?
7. It was 7 originals and Electric Avenue, yeah.
Yeah, so that surprised me. Out of all the covers they could have played, they played Electric Avenue, which they've been playing a ton. But they got a really good jam out of this one, too. I got pretty into this one. I was excited about it. And
the crowd was loving it. Right. We talk about on AAT, we talk about covers, and, Electric Avenue is definitely a hot topic a lot of the time, especially for Mr. Jive Goose over there. But I think it was a great pick here. At the beginning, I was kind of okay, it's Electric Avenue again, whatever. But the crowd loved it. And, you're going to play a cover. I think this is a great choice. Obviously, personally, I would have rather something like The Way It Is. in a slot like that because they also slay that. But Rick's voice is so well suited to that song, and I think that definitely may have helped with the conversion of some new people.
Yeah, I would say that Electric Avenue is probably more of an arena cover than the way it is maybe as well. But let me just say, to Greg's point, and not to continue this whole thing, but that's kind of how I felt about Atlas Dogs. I had no problems with Turbulence. What surprised? Maybe a little bit. If you would have said, "Hey, what are your 5? Give me your top 5 guesses," that probably wouldn't have been in my top 5. But I really
how many fantasy
love it.
points did you get last night again?
We're not. No, we can't do that on this podcast. Remember? No fantasy talk. And also, I thought we were all here to agree. So I'm glad we're getting this out of the way early.
It's locker room talk, right?
But yeah, that's kind of how I felt about Atlas Dogs. I was more surprised to hear that in the 2 slot. Maybe the triumphant Turbulence ending and then right into the composed intro to Flea might have been cool too. But anyway, I agree with all the comments on Flea. I thought it was a really strong, not too long, which I think we probably would have expected that they're going to keep things, somewhat on a tight timeline. But yeah, I thought it was a good version. It also gave them an opportunity to kind of, showcase a little bit of their tension and release kind of style that I'm sure much of the crowd is familiar with. And yeah, I thought that's kind of, I thought the set was kind of moving along quite nicely by the time Electric Avenue kicked in, but not a bad cover choice. Ryan says we talk a lot about covers. Yeah, we joke a lot about covers. And, the only question for me is, when it comes to songs like Electric Avenue, which has been it's been at the top of the most played covers of the year, kind of most of the year, is why Electric Avenue 6 times, but,
No, Me and My Uncle.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think if you're walking into this territory of these fan bases merging, and Rob Storm had a good comment about, Electric Avenue circa 1982, good way to catch the crowd's attention. I totally agree. But imagine knowing what they could do with a half step or a Me and My Uncle, taking that for a walk.
I think half step's coming for sure.
Oh, I think so too. I mean, I barely know the band at all. I don't know the guys at all. So no guarantees. But I just think, and I could be overthinking this. I'm really sensitive. But just out of the gates, Trey has nothing to prove here, and
Correct.
He certainly proved that he can really, really hang. And I love all the new stuff. But I just, I think, imagine if there was a Jive 1 in the first.
You were looking for some.
The energy would be through the roof, and listen,
yeah,
life can't be all bangers. I get it, but I think well placed bangers.
Greg,
through some doors.
Greg, do you have any insight into kind of how they got prepared for this tour, just in terms of repertoire, or is it really just rehearsing as any tour? I mean, and I guess that's related to, do you think the song selection and rotation will be similar to usual?
So I think for the most part, it was actually business as usual. There was not as much opportunity of collaborative rehearsal. I think the idea going into this was that there would be more. So that's really, it's really resulted in a couple days of tech and rehearsing and making peanut butter and chocolate kind of on the fly. But I think what we're gonna probably see is the guys are going to be riding high off of what was an excellent fall tour, and kind of sitting in what they've been doing well in that sense, or 3-minute hunger sites like they played in LA.
That's a whole different topic. We'll have to talk about that another time because I'm still confused about that. But all right, so Tumble is a good another 15-minute jam they get into.
That one though,
yeah,
I think best non-sit-in jam of the night for sure. They get into that churning theme with the dual guitar that we didn't see a ton of during fall tour. So really excited to see kind of they're touching that darkness a little bit again. Hopefully that continues throughout the rest of the tour. But I think this Tumble definitely lots of re-listen value there.
It's really good. And I wanted to ask you, Brian, just based on not being there, like I usually listen to Fish, Tab, Goose shows on Nugs or Live Fish the day after. I typically don't watch webcasts just because of the way my life works with kids and stuff. But it's sort of, I feel like last night, like I had to watch it this morning. Like, I don't think you can listen to. Then there's the thing where you have to like listen to one set on one place and one set on another place.
Yeah.
But Brian, are you going to watch all the shows? Like, will you always watch all the shows? And do you think you can kind of capture or understand the vibe and what's happening without watching it? Could you just listen to these two sets on different platforms and kind of like get the same feel as if you were watching the webcast?
So first question. Yeah, I'll probably be watching all of these live as they happen. And that's just how I like to do it anyway. I don't want to miss it. I don't want to wait if I don't have to. You know what I mean? I want to know what they played, how they played everything. I mean, I just got to know. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'll tune in live. And yeah, it's an interesting question. I think for these types of shows, I think the visual does provide more value than maybe if they were, a show in the middle of fall tour somewhere. And I think part of why I say that is, just the size of this venue, the size of the stage, the light, everything was visually, a little bit of an enhanced or a different experience than
camera work too.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting point too, because it's the Live Fish crew doing the webcast. We don't have Danny on stage with the moving cam as normal. Coach not directing. You've got there was a moving robo cam on the side of the stage. You got people with the big professional looking video cameras on their shoulders around. So I haven't gone to the video yet, but I'm excited to see what that looks like, versus what we're used to with Goose.
Yeah. And okay, well, I guess anything else, Brian, on that point before we keep going?
No, I think that sums it up. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody is going to want to watch these if at all possible. Yeah.
So Western Sun, it was next. That's one of my top 2 or 3 Goose songs. But
yeah,
we got to get to the sit-in.
I was getting antsy by the time Western Sun rolled around. I was like, "Where's Trey?"
Right. And so Neil, tell us about the sit-in. Maybe start with the All I Need, but just tell us about those 2 songs from your perspective.
Well, I mean, they're incredible, right? I think this is the centerpiece of this whole show, is these 2 songs that we're going to talk about now. I think, Brian and Ryan can attest to this. I just went insane in group chat. I lost my mind. I wasn't expecting Trey to come out and do All I Need,
for 20
the first
minutes.
show of the tour. So yeah, I was ecstatic. And then, when they followed that incredible jam, 22 minutes of that tune with a Pancakes, I also wasn't expecting that. So, I mean, and then there was some really, and both very, very good playing, but there was an awesome amount of Trey and Rick listening to each other and playing off of each other in that Pancakes. That was just so satisfying. It was great. And it was a really, really short Pancakes. I think that might be the shortest Pancakes they've played. Yeah. Without going into another song, like a standalone Pancakes. Very short, but very good. And I'm going to go back and listen to that a ton. But oh man, it was something else. I was so excited.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that yet.
So as just curious, how does, just off of last night versus Radio City, how does the sit-in compare? Because I know you were at Radio City and so was Greg, but how does it compare being in the audience for both of those sit-ins? How does that stack up?
Well, I think audience reaction at Radio City was much, much stronger, obviously, because it was unexpected, even though somebody gave it away. But I'm not going to name any names. So the crowd reaction wasn't as intense, but I think in terms of experiencing the music, this music was far better than the music that was played at Radio City, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And I think, the amount they practiced together was obvious. Just Rick and Trey just sounded even better together in this one.
Yeah.
They got into it a lot faster too. I mean, it's never going to get old for me to see Trey coming out and playing with Goose. It's amazing. I mean, you could see Trey on the webcast, at least, just paying really close attention to what Rick was doing. And I think in the tab set, when they sat in, Rick was doing the same, like just really looking at him.
Yeah.
So that, clearly they're like, but then once they start improvising, at one point during the jam, like Trey's soloing, and then he like looks at Rick like, come on, let's join back in, like, and it's man, so fun. Also, I think Trey is also, based on conversations I've had and what I've heard, like he's a fan of Page's synths, and he likes the effects, and you could tell last night that he was really into the clav. He was into, he was like really into that. Yeah. Ryan, what were your, what'd you think of that All I Need?
So I basically was just, losing my mind for 20 minutes. It immediately exceeded every single one of my expectations. At Radio City for Hunger Site Arcadia, Trey had all of the chord changes taped to his amp in front of him. It was clear. There was very minimal preparation there. This one, from what I've seen, he just had a teleprompter for lyrics, and that, it seemed that he was very well rehearsed on All I Need, knew the riffs and, where to go in the song, which was really cool. I guess he's been spending some time over the fall, like listening to tapes and learning the songs, which, is very, very exciting. And it's crazy because, they weren't, Greg, you mentioned that they had very minimal prep time together, which is really interesting because they sounded like they've been playing together for so long. Like Rick and Trey, especially, we keep talking about, my dad likes to use the word guitarmony, that kind of like Allman Brothers-y sound with the dual lead guitars just absolutely dialed into each other. And Rick and Trey had that all night, which was incredible. And yeah, that clav part of the jam when, Trey and Rick are playing off each other like crazy. And then Trey turns over to Peter and is like, on the wah with that like crunchy tone, like kind of trading licks with the clav. Like it was crazy. And they got into that darker jam and peaks and just, it was incredible. I losing my mind.
Greg, were you losing your mind?
I was, yeah. No, I think watching such an experienced improvisational musician like Trey really navigate a long jam with Goose was pretty special. There were really some of those Jedi moments where he could drive things in a certain direction that was very subtle. And I'm thinking, if I'm an apt musician like Rick or Peter, anyone in Goose, really, like, and I've been listening to Fish for my whole life, I think you kind of have that like subtle, I know where this may go. I know where Trey may want to take this. And it's got to be pretty cool, I think, for Trey to be playing with some musicians who kind of understand that. And they're not just the other three guys in Fish. And so to kind of hear things go in a direction that is naturally Trey and have Peter follow and Rick follow. It didn't sound like it was just kind of classic Goose, which was super cool. My question is, like, I'm wondering if it will work out, if we can get a jam where it's, Rick, Peter, and Trey on guitar. Like, is there space for all of them to coexist?
Well, yeah, they did that at Radio City for Dripfield.
Right. And Dripfield is like a, whole lot of sound.
Yes.
Like I feel like they can, but I want, I
would love to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a drive.
Somebody, I forget who it was. I think it may have been in the Jam Base recap of last night, but somebody mentioned about, Trey living out his like dream for a 2-guitar band, which, he's talked about a lot, is like, he loves playing in a 2-guitar band. And I think it's so evident that he loves playing with Rick because, Rick is a guitarist who understands how to play with another guitarist on stage, not stepping on his toes, giving him space, but also contributing ideas. Like, they're throwing musical ideas, finishing each other's sentences. Like, just, yeah, Trey just seemed so happy throughout both jams and just so dialed in, and made me very happy.
Yeah, I mean, and he, for the sit-ins with, going back to Neil Young to, Derek Trucks. I mean, he loves playing with Derek Trucks. He loves playing with these guitarists who he knows, like, listen and are great, I mean, it's, they're clearly, especially in the sit-in, the end of the tab set, it just seemed like everyone was like just having so much fun, and we'll talk about that. But it just looked like a pure joy from everyone. I noticed. So Trey was wearing in-ear monitors during the sit-in, but then he was wearing them for the tab set also. Like he doesn't wear them with Fish, and I guess I don't know when that started, but I knew that he never had until recently.
It was the second time second or third time in his career.
Yeah, he wore them Mexico 2020, I think, is the only time he's worn them with Fish.
We had the pleasure of seeing some of the crew after the show. And our good friend Sam was doing monitors, and he said Trey walked off after his set with a big smile, and said, we've almost got this figured out, which I guess is positive. But yeah, it should be interesting. I had no idea that Trey didn't play with in-ears. And it should be interesting to kind of hear him enter this world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So the tab set, do you guys have thoughts? I mean, Ryan, I know you've seen tab before, right?
Twice. Yeah.
Twice. Neil, have you seen tab? Are you familiar with tab?
That was my first tab show. I've been seeing Fish since 1993, but that was my first tab show. And like my brother was joking before the show we went together. He was saying like, Trey finally tricked me into going to see tab, but I just had never gone out of my way to do it, and I'm glad that I did. But.
Yeah, I mean it's a different experience. I think tab shows are so fun. They're like my wife who goes to a lot of Fish shows with me. Also, she loves tab show. It's like it's fun. It's easy. It's like you're not going to really get those moments when you're like lost in what's going on. Like if you like songs and you like horns, like it's great. And that's how they started that set last night, which was all sort of, classic tab. Any highlights from you guys before we talk about the sit-ins?
Everything's Right was awesome. Trey had some amazing playing in that. MoMA with Desron live blew me away. Desron was really kind of what I was zeroed in on. He sounded great from where I was sitting, but yeah, he was just holding down that low end. It was awesome.
I thought it was great. But I also kind of related to what I was saying about the Goose set. I think Set Your Soul Free really out of the gates. It was like, okay, this is why Trey is so good at this. Like Trey came in and commanded the room, and the band fires at all cylinders on Set Your Soul Free. So it was a really, really, really strong start. Yeah, I mean that, but like, I think I was similar to Ryan. Like I was kind of just going crazy the whole time. Everything's Right for sure. Sand was pretty good too.
Yeah.
Neil, so what was your experience like at this?
Well, so it was interesting for me. I had to move. There was some like aggressive crowd movement going on where I was, and it became inhospitable. So I had to move back by the soundboard, which was interesting. So that was like right around MoMA Dance when I did that, and got back there and kind of settled in. And yeah, I enjoyed it. It was pretty good. I lied. I've seen Ghost of the Forest before, so it wasn't really like kind of my first like kind of non-Fish Trey thing. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, a tab show is interesting insofar as you just get a lot of songs and some jams mixed in, and the horns are just amazing. I had just seen them when they were at Phil and Friends with Rick and the horns, and everything they do is just so impressive. It was super fun.
Yeah. I think I've seen people, I guess, who don't often see tab on the internet today saying that it felt like overproduced, which I just think is funny. I hate to do this, but if you listen to our podcast we did with Trey last year, Alive Again, you kind of like understand where this band came from, which is like Sun Ra and like the classical training that he did and all the stuff that he has done, leading up to whenever he formed this 98 or whatever. Like that's what he was envisioning, right? This like big band, big collaborative band with a lot of moving parts. And I just think it's interesting to think of it as overly produced. It's just like, it's not super improvisational. I guess that's the point. It's more structured and a little bit more predictable than a Fish show.
Yeah, but that's not that's not the intention of a Tab show. Like, you know, Trey, obviously we know from the tour with Fishman last fall, and from what I've heard that they do at Soundcheck sometimes, you know, they have the capability to go out in these crazy long extended jams if they want to. But I think Trey likes just, you know, going out with Tab, playing songs, having fun, you know, playing some of his other material that he doesn't play with Fish, and also taking new spins on Fish songs, which, you know, you hear a lot of people complaining that Tab is playing too much Fish now after the Beacon jams, and so many of these songs got kind of reworked for that setting. But like, I love the way MoMA sounds in a Tab setting. It's very different than the Fish one too. Like, you know, Russ and Desron approach that groove very differently than Fishman and Mike do. So I feel like it's not really the same song, and like, you know, with the backing vocalists on it, like it's a whole different experience. And, you know, you go in and it's just fun. You know, I haven't really heard Roll Like a River very much, but I really enjoyed that last night. You know, I think watching part of the webcast from Chicago a couple of weeks ago, I really enjoyed, you know, some of the newer, the Mercy songs, a couple of the ones that he played. So I think there's a lot about Tab that's amazing, and you shouldn't be going in expecting a 25-minute everything's right, because that's not what you're going to get. If you go in expecting to have a lot of fun with a lot of 8 to 12-minute songs, amazing.
Yeah, I mean, they're executing compositions
Precisely.
essentially. It's just they're different. They're different. It's a different kind of composition than what you think of when you think of Fish, and you know, the composed sections of Reba and that kind of thing. But that's what a lot of these Tab songs are, though, right? They're pieces of music with composed sections for various instruments, and they go out and they execute that. So yeah, I agree. And it's always nice. I mean, you do generally get, you know, some extended jams with Tab. So you kind of do get the best of both worlds, you know? So yeah, like Matthew said, you know, some people just aren't always the greatest at this stuff, you know?
Even like Megillah, one of the stories that Trey told in this podcast we did with them about Megillah was taking Megillah and arranging it for Tab. And Jennifer Hartswick told the story about how they'd been up for a few days, or at least Trey had, and took 7 hours to arrange this 3-minute song for the Tab lineup. So like, you know, he takes this stuff seriously, and I think all the arranging basically of all these songs is done by Trey. So like, it's clearly a creative outlet for him, just like writing Split Open and Melt or something, you know, just like it's another kind of way to get creative. And some of these things get rearranged like in between tours, which is just crazy. Like that, I mean, to me, but you know, I'm glad he does it and not me. Brian, watching at home, the Wolfmans, that's when we get the sit in. What was your take on that?
So yeah, it was great. I wasn't fully tuned in to the whole set. You know, I mean, I had it on, but I was on Twitter a lot, and I was catching up with some other stuff. And, but I was waiting to see what was going to happen with sit-ins. One of my sources on the floor, you know, one of my majestical sources was saying, "Hey, the guys are right behind me." And this is mid-set. He's like, I don't know if this is going to happen. These guys are out here in the crowd right behind me. And then a few minutes later, it was like, they're gone. They just rushed away. So we started to get excited, and I loved seeing them come out for something like Wolfman's. You know, that was just another bunch of questions that we had. You know, what will any Goose members play with Tab? Like, what does that look like? And, you know, what are the potential song choices? So Wolfman's, and it makes sense. It's kind of got a nice, easy, straightforward progression that they can just kind of stretch out as long as they want. So very cool to see those guys. Let me just say one more thing about like Trey and Rick. What's so crazy about Trey is watching him, he's not looking at Rick's hands. You know, a lot of times when you see people, you know, playing together on stage, guitar players especially, they'll be staring at each other's hands and the fretboard. Trey just stares at Rick's eyes, and because he just hears everything. You know what I mean? It's that's like the most Jedi thing talking about Jedi. That's the Jedi move right there. I mean, he doesn't need to look at the instrument. He's looking at his eyes, and he's probably picking up something emotively through the eyes as well. But he's just hearing everything, and from hearing it to reacting to it is so fluid and so quick. It's really impressive. And the fact that it was so impressive going both ways between these two, I mean, obviously I'm a big Goose guy, but Rick really has really impressed with each of these sit-ins with Trey. I mean, it's really blown me away.
Just for the record, anybody who may doubt Jive Goose's credibility talking about Trey and Fish, he did the whole winter 1997 European tour. So just in case there are any doubters out there.
We should have had you on for 2/17/97, Brian. Fuck.
I had signed a contract with Storm Sound when I talked about 2/17/97 on that show, so I'm not allowed to talk about
the classic non-compete with Storm Sound. I've heard of it. Heard about it. What else, Greg? What do you think of that? The sit-in. I mean,
I do want to quote Bruce and say that Rick does have beautiful eyes, so I'm sure Trey really did enjoy staring into them. I think Wolfman's was a really strong start, like kind of. Like you were saying, easy to chew on. But can we talk about Slow Llama? Like, that was so awesome. I mean, I had like a little bit of speaking of kind of a hostile crowd, the dude next to me who fell into the row in front of us multiple times, really, he was fine. He was okay. It was not. Bruce was on the other side of him. I think he was saying, during he's Bruce's lawyer, right? Yeah. So he was saying during Trey's set, like, if they play Llama, my shirt's coming off. It didn't, but it easily could have. I mean, that Slow Llama was incredible, and I think, regardless of me reconciling Turbulence, I was like, damn, this is really why we're all here, and this is so cool. Like I think I had to just kind of zoom out for a second and realize actually what was happening. And it was great. And then I think the first tube also Guitarmony abound. And it was really, really dope to see Trevor have that shining moment without sunglasses on.
He was wearing sunglasses.
I don't think so, but you were closer than I was. So yeah, am I crackling here?
Who's crackling? Oh, there we go.
Might be you, Greg, but it's okay.
It was Neil.
I'm back. There we go.
Maybe it was Neil.
Yeah. So sunglasses aside, I think the first one was great.
It was so good. The Slow Llama. I mean, with Rick soloing there. I mean, clearly they were just having fun, and it's funny to see like Peter and Ray and Jeff is on with Zero. I mean, everyone was just the stage was packed, but it sounded cool. I mean, Trey's used to with Tab, having a lot of people on stage, but this was quite a crowd.
Yeah, and Llama, that like envelope filter bass intro from Desron was so cool. I love that. But yeah, during Llama, I was like, where's Trevor? Like, is he just side stage? Just like, yeah. But I loved seeing him get up there with Desron, and lead off first tube. That was really cool. I loved in one section, Peter threw in like a little fill on Ray's Whirly during first tube, which was really awesome.
What was first tour though?
I don't know. I would also like to point out a little bit of stats here. The last time members of Goose played first tube, at least from what is recorded on lgoose.net, was November 23rd, 2016, which is a gap of 456 shows. So a little bit of geekery for you all there.
Where was that 2016 show?
O'Neill's.
Oh, yeah. Yes, 100%. We could do a whole episode. We could do a whole episode on that show, or just that locale. But yeah, I think one of those things though really is, and Bruce and I were talking about this. First tube was in the rotation early on. It was in the rotation for Vasudo as well. And so to just see these guys playing these songs that were so formative for them, it's just mind-blowing. So, will Trey arrange Yem for Tab? We'll have to find out.
We're gonna find out. And Bruce, I
Or will
appreciate
Goose just
Bruce.
play Yam?
I appreciate Bruce constantly commenting, but Bruce, you do need to show up and talk at some point this tour. So it's again, this is a contractual obligation. What do you guys? This is a good question from Andrew, who's watching on YouTube. How was the vibe in the crowd? Did it feel like a mixing of parties, or was it just a bunch of people hanging out? And what was it like from everyone's perspective?
People were really, really excited. I think definitely we talked about, Tab following Goose, maybe a little bit of a lull in terms of, what's going on stage. Like, you go from that All I Need Pancakes to then, an hour or so of just amazing Tab stuff, which it felt like, some of the crowd maybe was a little bit less engaged for that. But, once they got on stage, Wolfman's, I feel like started out a little bit rocky. But as they got that jam going, it was just the energy built. And, as the jam peaked, it was just everyone was like, yeah. And then for the whole encore, the crowd just felt like so dialed in, so excited about what was going on. It was incredible.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I mean, it seemed to me in both sets that it started pretty slow and crowd involvement was pretty kind of mellow. And then as each set went on, it got more and more kind of amped up. But that second, the Tab set definitely had an arc to it where it really ramped up fast towards the end there.
That's awesome. And maybe there's a comment from Brian. The chomper level was very low. Sound was great. I feel like those things might increase over time as we get further away from Portland, Maine. Once you get down to like Mohegan and Fairfax, and you might have more people talking, but hopefully not. I do think if you're going to this show, I guess there are people who are going just to check it out and see what it's like. But I think you have to really like want to see both of these bands to go to the shows. But we'll see what happens. What do you guys want to see in terms of collaboration on either side? Or like, I'm sure we all have lots of things we'd like to see, but what comes to mind first? Neil, you start?
I don't know. There's a few things that I'm looking forward to that I'm hoping happens. I think there's some speculation out there that Ghost may be played. And that would be cool if that happens with Goose. I'd be really excited about that. I don't know, Trey doing Wisteria might be pretty amazing. So if that happens on this tour, I'll be more than happy. But those are the two things I think I'm looking forward to.
Mm-hmm. Brian, what about you?
So, I'm really excited to see the horns come out during Goose's set. I just feel like that's got to happen at some point. So a lot of choices for that particular sit-in. Greg, you mentioned Jive One earlier. Jive One's one of my hopes for having the horns come out and play with. I think that would be super sick, especially the jazzy parts, and I think that would be really awesome. And then we were talking about this earlier during that kind of encore, that Tab encore, where all of both bands are on stage. Maybe a Goose song gets played at some point during that. That would be really cool. So I mean, look, the awesome sit-ins are going to happen. Now it's just like, what songs are we going to get? And it's going to be amazing either way, no matter what they choose.
Ryan, do you have thoughts on specifics?
Yeah, I did just kind of give that away. But I do want to see definitely Brian, like I want to see in that Tab encore slot, like they all play a Goose song. And I would love to see Trey play a Fish song with Goose. Like I think, Neil, you mentioned Ghost. Ghost would be incredible. Trey with Goose. I feel like they would kill that song. Clav. I think also Jive 2 with one or all of the horns would be great. We have the experience of hearing that when they did it with Grippo, which was phenomenal. And I would love to see if they get like James out there for like a long jam as well. Like, with Grippo, they had that Creatures, they had that opening Flea where they got into that extended jam territory with the sax. And I would love to see that happen again. Fifth of Beethoven with Grippo was phenomenal. So it would be cool. And then with Tab, I would love to see Animal with everybody as like a show closer. I think that would be awesome.
Nice. Greg, do you have anything to add?
Dark horse with Zero.
Oh,
Nice.
on flippers.
You know, I also think, I think definitely a dark horse with percussion, because Goose had percussion, in and out over the years, and it really always augmented dark horse. And
what is Jeff to you?
I think Jeff mentioned it yesterday that he really, really had a blast playing with Zero. So I think that they're going to be super locked in. And they've actually had very similar training to get where they are. And so I think they have like this mutual admiration society. I think a classic hot tea with tab horns in the similar style of Radio City would make a whole lot of sense. And then I think both bands combining for 2001.
All right. All right. Yeah, we got to hear some of like the horns like they were arranged on the album, right? It seems like that would happen at some point. But this all sounds great. I'm just excited to watch and listen to another show in, a matter of hours or days, whatever. It'll be soon. But most importantly, the collaboration that everyone's been waiting for, like I said at the beginning, which is the combination of our three shows, has happened. So, Tab and Goose is cool, but this
got nothing on this.
Got nothing on this. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much. Thanks everybody for listening and watching. We had an awesome crowd. Thanks for contributing all the comments. We'll be back again. I guess that's going to be Saturday. 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
Let's talk about the Friday night show, and hopefully we'll get this crew and maybe some others in here too to talk with us. So, and we'll be releasing all these shows via audio through all the shows. So
all of them.
Every podcast. So
tell your friends. There are like 18 different ways to watch and or listen to this.
At least we're trying to cover all our bases. All right, Greg, Neil, Brian, Ryan, thank you guys. Thanks everybody for listening and watching. See you guys soon.
See you Saturday.
Later, y'all.
Peace.
Osiris.